Welcome to the Rich Report, a podcast with news and information on the world of high-performance computing. Today, my guest is from Univa. We have Gary Tyreman. He's the president and CEO of the company. So, Gary, welcome back to the show.
Well, thanks, Rich. It's always good to be here. Appreciate it.
Well, you bet, Gary. You know, it's been a while since we talked, and I thought it'd be good to catch up because you've got some exciting news. And can you tell us more?
Well, I appreciate that. I hope that you've been having fun talking with Fritz and some of the stuff that he's been working with you on. So, yeah, we've got some big news. What we're announcing today is Univa's acquired the Grid Engine software assets, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit. I thought maybe before that, if you go to the next slide, I'll just give a very quick market update. And these are things that Univa is seeing in the industry and in the space. I thought it'd be pretty interesting because hopefully it's supporting what other ecosystem partners and fellow travelers are seeing. But first, we're seeing enterprises back in the business of investing, and in particular investing in infrastructure. And there's a number of reasons why. And I think one of the key indicators that we've seen is there's been a recognition that failing faster in a design or in a drug or in a simulation is the more important element, because as you go further to the right, deeper down the pipeline, it becomes more expensive. And so in order to meet that means you need to give a couple thousand cores to a scientist for a couple months, maybe a couple weeks. You need to develop a slightly different approach and in your simulation and have the ability to run maybe larger memory projects that can run for a longer period of time. And so that brings expansion. Expansion is always good, whether it's from end users, which is adding more users to the system, which drives growth, or new hardware. And we're seeing lots of that with people acquiring new products, new technologies, new operating systems, and systems upgrade. And then, of course, what that does is it drives a key element of our business, which is middleware needs to be integrated with the new operating system, needs to run. In some cases, needs to be compiled. Development needs to improve, so new NVIDIA technologies, as they get put into environments, and the company goes from a couple hundred GPUs up to 60,000 GPU cores. These are significant enhancements, and it takes a lot of effort to get into them. So that brings me to my second point, which is we're seeing a resurgence again of ISVs and hardware certification, and that's really becoming more important to end users. And that's not just something I think Univa is saying. I think the industry would probably agree that what we're seeing is our customers require the integration. They're asking us to do it. They're asking for us to support different hardware architectures and network architectures. And of course, the flip side is when someone's penetrating one of our accounts and they're not the incumbent, they're being told Univa is the incumbent, Grid Engine is what you need to integrate with, it needs to be supported. And so that's driving a whole lot of activity for us, and it's behind the scenes right now. And I think over the next few weeks, we'll try to get those announcements out. But they're very promising for us, and in particular, to tie it back to why we're here, very promising for the Grid Engine community and Grid Engine as a whole. And then the last point is enterprises continue to evaluate big data. And I think what we've seen is recognition that mixed workload is a requirement and will become more important as the production environments grow and the number of users. And again, just like we're seeing the number of first points up there, as your expansion from users grows, your workload grows, mixed workloads and being able to manage all of that is going to become increasingly important. If you go to the second slide, this is really more pertaining to Univa and more of our business update rather than the market. And this is our growth continues to accelerate in 2013. By the end of Q3, we'd already doubled our customer count. We're projecting a significant increase in Q4. We continue to expand outside of the enterprise technical computing. A couple of months ago, we announced in a number of different media interviews that most of our customers and revenues driven off of the enterprise, meaning outside of academia, outside of government, roughly around 82%. And that continues. That's being driven by really two things. First, big data, not exclusively Hadoop, but big data penetration. We have customers that are running just ETL processes, but using it on parallel environments. Enterprise applications, whether it's credit scoring or an airline that's scheduling crew and fleet, we continue to grow. And I think these two areas are going to drive a lot of opportunity for Univa, but also for our ecosystem partners. In terms of Grid Engine software events, we just completed our 2013 user forums. Rather than one big one, we broke it down into a little more personal style, personal setting. And instead of myself or Bill Bryce, our head of products, attending all of these, we sent original developers, and that allowed the attendees to really get into some great conversations and talk about things that they do with the product and how they do it and capabilities. And so we did 8 of these across the U.S., Europe, Middle East. We've also completed several of our advanced admin training courses. We've got several more spun up. And I think this year what we've been able to do is prove the value that end users are, as they grow the systems and grow the environments, they require a tighter integrated product and solution. That's not just from Univa, but it's from several partners and several players. We have scalability limits that we smash through. We have customers in EDA on the path to in excess of 200 million jobs a month, and that's throughput. That's not stuff that's sitting in a queue. That's on a fairly small cluster, which is, I think, even more phenomenal. And we've learned that monitoring and managing licenses is a high pain point in the enterprise, and I think in particular it's something that's presenting an opportunity for ourselves and for our customers. If you look at the next slide, just really quickly touching on what's happening with Grid Engine. We've got version 8.16 we just announced, which has some schedule enhancements, in particular for larger environments. We released Unisight 3.0, which is our analytics product that's bundled with the Univa Grid Engine product. And coming up this fall, we've got a very active roadmap. We're looking to release 8.17, which features C groups, full implementation. We're trying to get that done. Our goal is to get it completed for supercomputing. However, that's not always the case. We've got a native Windows version, which is in alpha, and will be shipped coincident to 8.2. There's a significant number of changes in the code, in the scheduler, the way in which things work. And so that'll be released with our next major version of Grid Engine, which is 8.2, will form the basis, and that'll probably be in the early spring. And we've got UniCloud Next Generation, which is our systems management product that enables bursting into cloud environments, whether it's local or remote. And what we've done recently is we've built that on top of Puppet. We'll be talking about that more as we go into supercomputing. If you look at the next slide, the reason I'm really here today is to talk about how we've just completed the acquisition of the Grid Engine assets, becoming the sole provider and commercial provider of Grid Engine. If you go to the next slide, I'll just give a little bit of information on what that means. First, as part of the transaction, Univa has acquired the IP, which includes the copyrights, as well as the trademarks into the software and into the business. Univa also will assume the support for Oracle customers who are under contract by Oracle for Grid Engine software. So those customers who've acquired Grid Engine from Oracle the last couple of years. Specifically, that's version 6.2, U6, U7, or U8. Those customers can renew and remain on the Oracle binary, or of course, they can easily elect to upgrade to Univa. And then we've built a very cost-effective service to help people upgrade. It's about it's less than a day's work for us to help move them up to Univa's product. If you go to the next slide, I think this kind of hits home. What does this mean? We've been saying for a couple of years that Univa is the home of Grid Engine. I think what this does is it amplifies that by reuniting the intellectual property with the original developers of that IP, and that's Fritz Ferstel and his original team who remain with Univa and enable us to drive our business and grow. I think the consolidation will eliminate confusion. There is one grid engine. There's one grid engine software. There's one roadmap. There's a couple forks, but there's one mainstream product. And as a customer or a user of grid engine, I think more importantly, it creates confidence that they made the right decision, that there's a future, and that offers peace of mind. So that's what I was here for, Rich.
Yeah. Well, I have to say congratulations, Gary. I mean, it's been 3 years since Oracle took that technology over from Sun, but I think for the benefit of our listeners, could you give me the brief history of Grid Engine, because it's been a long story.
It has, and I think it's a testament to the product that it's withstood so many changes. But if you go back in history, before I think I was had gray hair, certainly I had more of it. It was two companies got together, and that was Genia Software and Chord Systems. They merged in '99 to become Gridware. Sun at the time was interested in the technology. I think they understood how it could magnify hardware sales and had a tremendous pulling effect. So after searching around, they acquired Gridware in '99. I think it was 2000, and renamed the product Grid Engine. They open sourced it, and that was around 2001. And fundamentally, I think the simplest way of looking at it is they built a great product. Back in the days when I was just entering the space, there was this thing called Sun Grid Engine. It was developing at a very rapid pace. I think a key element is, although it was open source, the development community wasn't really that active. 97, 98% of the code over the 10 years it was open source was written by paid developers, primarily Sun, and of course a little bit of Oracle. When Oracle acquired Sun in 2010, they made a business decision, and not just exclusive to Oracle, to Grid Engine, but to HPC as a business. And although it's a growing industry, certainly not a niche, that's in excess of 30% of the server revenue, 30% of the CPUs that are shipped into the server market from Intel or AMD, it's not something to sneeze at. They made a decision and, closed down the community, changed the price, changed the license, and that's the time in early 2011 that Univa stepped in. And I think at that time, the opportunity was there for numerous, organizations and people, and I think that also created some confusion because you had Oracle kind of in the business, you had Univa definitely in the business, then there's some forks. And today, I think that's one thing at a minimum should get clarified and cleaned up. And I think it's a testament to what Fritz built with his guys, that people would stick through all of that, little bit of a roller coaster, but I hope that we can now start to solidify that. And some of the things I was alluding to are speaking to how Univa has been able to not just stabilize and create the confidence in the product, but working with partners, getting it entrenched in part of areas and into integration discussions with organizations and reseller contracts that, frankly, wouldn't have worked even 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's really it's fascinating for me to watch, Gary, because I was with the HPC marketing guys at Sun when Grid Engine came on, and what I'm seeing here is with the growth you're seeing at Univa is kind of the fruition of the vision we had back then to get into new markets, especially outside of that government and space and university space. So how big a component is that big data piece, that enterprise piece, to your success?
So, enterprise maybe I'll answer it this way. Non-technical computing is, I think, important to everyone in this ecosystem. I think each of our competitors and our partners need to get a better handle and understanding of how do we how do we take this view people have that this is a niche, yet it drives tens of billions in revenue, a third of the hardware revenue worldwide for servers, and how do we kind of drop those shackles? I think we've done a very poor job, each of us, including over the last 10 years. So I think it's important for everyone. Now, for Univa in particular, it's already an important component. There's, depending how you slice it, we have 20% of our customer count that's not in HPC, don't know what it is, they don't identify with it. And I don't mean, guys that are doing chip design that don't think they're HPC. I mean technical computing. They're not doing simulations. We have customers that are airlines. We have trains that are running their schedules. We have organizations that are doing ETL processes. We have big data underneath, or typically Hadoop. So we have a number of those kinds of accounts. And I believe for the business to grow, to magnify, and to increase the value, which is, at the end of the day, what my job is, we need to continue that expansion. And I think the only horse, in my opinion, again, I'm a little bit biased here, but I think the only horse that can ride over that cliff is Grid Engine. And part of that is the history that we just described, we just talked about, because it was very easy. It was, in some ways, Fritz and I talk about this all the time. The goal at the time was not exclusively to make money on the product, but to drive value and to democratize technologies, to make it more accessible, to put it in more hands, and they did that. And I think that mission was accomplished. What they didn't do was balance the trade-off. And you can't, if you're a billion-dollar company, maybe you can fund some things, but if you're not, it's not really that easy to do. And so there's a balancing act that has to exist where a company is stable and profitable, growing and healthy, and as a customer and as a user of the product and user of technology, that should be the primary wish, because if it doesn't exist, we just experienced over the last few years what could happen.
Right. I mean, you look at the loyal following of Sun Microsystems out there, and but without a sustainable business model, all that customer love just didn't quite make it. So, so Gary, before we go, I wanted to ask you about this partner strategy, because my ears really perked up at that point. I go to the Puppet conference every year, and I know you're going to tell us more about that in the near future, but how important is that to building the Grid Engine ecosystem?
Well, Puppet's a particular case in point. So, I think what's pleasing after all of our work and effort is when you've got existing fellow travelers in this technical computing HPC space that are walking into accounts, and they're being told, around here it's Grid Engine and it's Univa. And there's work to be done, there's partnerships to be done, there's support that needs to be worked on, there's a cooperation that needs to be developed. And so on that side there, I think it's been very nice for us to see either a win or a loss for a partner choosing to work with us or not. And I think that's been very pleasing, because it's, at the end of the day, the customers rule the roost. So developing that ecosystem from the ISVs to the hardware, and working with those partners so that we can help each other has been a goal since day one. Now, it always takes time and it takes longer than what you hope for, but we're seeing the fruits now from that labor. Puppet is slightly different, because it was more of a discussion internally about when we had UniCloud, which has been, it's now version 3. We've had that for some time. We have customers that are using it, it's in production, and it does things a certain way. And what we learned was, when you walk into an existing environment, you can't ask them to re-image everything. And so the approach that we all had was, we're going to build something new and we can build an appliance. And that's great, but when you walk into a data center of oil and gas company that's got 8,000 servers, they're not rebuilding anything. So to add value, what you need to do is ride on top of some technologies. We looked around in our space, in our enterprise, our customers, we see a lot of Puppet. It's not everywhere, but it certainly is well adopted. And people are using it in some cases for very simple things. In other cases, they're using very wide-ranging recipes. And so for us, it was a vehicle. I can now take the bottom part of UniCloud, literally rip it out, re-implement it on top of Puppet, and we can drive Puppet. So we're making Puppet do things that it can't do on its own by establishing our upper-end value, which was the know-how of what we need, because we know what grid engine requires and what the customer's scheduling environment looks like, to build servers on demand, either local on a hypervisor, remote via Amazon, or even pull them out of vSphere and then push them all back and start driving that with policy.
Well, that's pretty exciting, Gary. So I guess, to wrap up here, can we anticipate some more announcements coming up for SC13?
Well, we're definitely there.
Yeah.
Not looking forward to wearing snow boots again like last year, but we're definitely there. Hopefully next year will be somewhere warm. And, I think we'll have a series of announcements leading up to it, notwithstanding this is probably one of the biggest ones that we could do. I think, to put it in perspective, there's really 2 days that stand out for Univa. And the first one in our history is the announcement that we have brought the team over. And I think this is probably more meaningful, but somewhat just a little bit less exciting. It just has certain ring to it that we've been selected as the go-forward provider a grid engine, and are now in a position with the heft of our customers, which is growing sizably, and we're very excited about SC. I think more excited about how we'll finish the year and go into 2014.
Well, great, Gary. Well, this is terrific news for the grid engine community. I want to congratulate you on that, and good job. Couldn't have been easy.
Well, thank you. It was most interesting.
Yeah. Given the players there, I bet. All right, Gary. Well, hey, thanks again for coming on the show. That's it for the Rich Report, folks. Stay tuned for more news and information on the world of high-performance computing.